Hi, welcome to lesson 3 of 10. In the previous lesson, you learned about auto layout and auto layout constraints. In this video, you're going to learn about stack views and how they're going to help you position elements while drastically cutting down on the number of auto layout constraints that you need to set. By the end of this video, you're going to have built this user interface. If you went through the lesson 2 worksheet, you might have noticed that this is what you built. However, you're going to see that by using stack views, you're going to be able to build this layout much easier and much faster. Let's start a brand new Xcode project. Make sure you're looking at iOS and choose single view app. Let's click next. I'm going to call this app 3 and all of these details should be the same. Language should be Swift. Let's click next and I'm just going to save it on my desktop here. Right here where the project configuration screen is, because we've got this node highlighted, scroll down to deployment info and under device orientation, we're going to uncheck portrait and just have landscape left and landscape right because this UI is going to be a landscape view. Let's go into the storyboard and we're going to click view as and let's just change it to landscape orientation, more so that we can visualize what we are actually building here. The next thing I want to do is let's click on the asset library right here and we're going to import the images for our Xcode project. Now I've provided a link in the description below to download these assets. The zip file is called lesson 3 assets. So I want you to go ahead and click that link, download it. I've got it already downloaded on my desktop here and I'm just going to double click it to unzip it. It's going to open up a folder. Inside, you're going to find 3 images. What I want you to do is just highlight all 3. You can press Command A to highlight everything. And then you can drag it either in here or in here. All right, so on the right-hand side, I'm going to have burger, burrito, and salmon. These are properly named already, so you don't need to change any of the assets' names. And then let's go into main.storyboard. And what we're going to start with today is a stack view. So let's go down here in the lower right hand corner, looking at the object library, type in stack view into the filter box. And there are 2 types, horizontal stack view and vertical stack view. So these icons might confuse you a little bit, but a horizontal stack view basically stacks things in a horizontal fashion. So the first item you add will be on the left, second item will be to the right of that, third item will be to the right of that one, and so on and so forth. For vertical stack view, when you add an item, that's going to be at the top, second item you add is going to be put below it, and then so on and so forth. So a vertical stack view stacks things vertically, while a horizontal stack view aligns all of your elements horizontally beside each other. So we're going to choose vertical stack view. We're just going to put it right there. And then let's change that filter text to a label. Just going to drag a label into the stack view. You'll notice that right here in this document outline, you have a label inside of the stack view. See, I can collapse the stack view and the label is inside of it. All right, so the stack view actually contains the label. You're going to see a bunch of red lines here because we haven't actually positioned the stack view, and we need to add a second element just to illustrate how the stack view works. So let's type in image view in here. Rather than dragging it onto the view here, you can actually just drag it directly into the stack view in the document outline. So you can see here, I've got the image view inside the stack view now. If I close the stack view, the image view and the label disappear. They're inside of it. And you can see here in the storyboard that our UI image view and label are stacked on top of each other, right, inside the stack view. I want the label to actually be on top of the stack view. So in this document outline, I'm just going to click and drag and rearrange these 2 elements so that the label is above the image view. So you see here? Now here's the cool thing. With this stack view element right here, let me just highlight it and go over on the right hand side. I can change the orientation whenever I want. So even though I added a vertical stack view onto my view, I can change it to a horizontal stack view. So let me just do that. And you can see if I do that, it's just going to position them side by side like that. And there is also a spacing property that I can set. If I just put 20 there, it's going to space it out so that it has a 20-point gap between each of the elements. And I can keep adding elements into my stack view, and it's going to place it side by side. No need to add any sort of auto layout constraints. Okay, so let me flip it back to vertical here. Now let's talk about some of the other things that we can set for a stack view. If I click on this alignment drop down, you're going to see that by default it's set to fill. I can set it to leading, center, or trailing. And if I set it to center, it's basically going to center all of the elements down the middle. And if I click on leading, it's going to left align all the elements inside of it. Trailing is right align, and fill basically tries to stretch it out so that it fills up the entire stack view. And this is the setting by default. So if I choose center, you're going to see that label become center aligned. So let's choose that. You can see that is center aligned. Now the image view is still like this because there really isn't any sort of inherent width to it. Once we do set an image, depending on that size of the image, you might see it centered. If it's very big, you might see it fill up the entire width. All right, so what I want to do next is we're going to want to create another 2 of these things. So let's add another image view there. And I'm actually going to make this one a little skinnier so that I can fit another one there. And I can just resize that a little bit so that we can just fit it into the view. Then we're going to choose a label, drag it, put it approximately above each of those image views. And you see how this guy is inside of a stack view, right, in the document outline. And we did this by adding a stack view first onto our view, and then we added the elements inside of the stack view. This time, because we have our elements already on the screen, I'm going to show you how to put existing elements into a stack view. There's actually a button to do that. So I'm going to highlight this UI image view. I'm going to hold down Command, and I'm going to click this label so that they're both highlighted. If I wanted to place these 2 elements into their own stack view, I first have to select them like I have, and then I go down here and click this button, Embed in Stack View. And when I click that, it automatically takes those 2 elements and puts them inside of a stack view. Now it's going to choose a vertical or a horizontal stack view depending on how they're already positioned. But it really doesn't matter because you can always just change the axis from the stack view property. So by default, Xcode chose to put it in a vertical stack view, which is what I wanted. Let's do the same thing with these 2. Click on the UI image view, hold down Command on your keyboard, and then click this so that you can multi-select both of them. And then let's go and click this button to put that in a vertical stack view. So now at this point, if you look over on the left-hand side, we have 3 stack views. And if you pop open each of them, you're going to see the label in the image view in each of them. Now you'll notice that the spacing for this stack view, we have a gap, right? Because we specified that spacing, but we haven't done so for these 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll highlight this stack view here, go to spacing and hit 20, and then go to this stack view, go to spacing and hit 20. And then what we're going to do now, let's close all of these stack views. We're going to highlight all 3 of them. You can either hold Shift on your keyboard and click this one so you highlight all of them, or you can hold Command and just individually select all 3, but you should have all 3 highlighted in blue like this. And then we're going to click on this stack view again. So when you do that, it's going to put all 3 of them into a horizontal stack view this time. So you should end up with something like this. You have a horizontal stack view, and inside of that you have 3 vertical stack views, and then inside of each vertical stack view you have a label and an image view like that. So now let's click on the horizontal stack view, and for spacing I'm going to put 20, and that's going to add a 20-point gap in between each of those vertical stack views. Now the only thing we need to position is actually this outer stack view, because it doesn't know, where to put this guy, right? So we have to position that. So go ahead and highlight this horizontal stack view, and then go down to the lower right, click on Add New Constraints, and we're going to uncheck Constraint to Margins. We are just going to 0 tab 0 tab 0, add 4 constraints like that. And I don't mind if they're relative to the safe area, that's fine. Actually, instead of zeros, we're going to do 20 just to be consistent with the 20 gaps in between each of the elements. So it's going to be 20 away from the top, 20 from the left, 20 from the right, and 20 from the bottom. Let's add 4 constraints. And then you're going to see this horizontal stack view being pulled in all of these directions right here. Now you can see that inside they're still kind of not positioned correctly, and we can actually change how they are distributed within a stack view. So let's go ahead, click that horizontal stack view. We go over to the right hand side to the inspector pane. I want to show you this alignment menu again. So if I click this, you're going to see top, center, and bottom. Well, before when I showed you this, it said leading, center, and trailing, right? For left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned, right? But how come this time it says top, center, and bottom? Well, the reason is because last time we were looking at a vertical stack view. And when you talk about alignment for a vertical stack view, you are either aligning things to the left, the center, or the right. When you're talking about a horizontal stack view, which is what we have highlighted right now, alignment refers to top, center, or bottom aligned. So right now it's set to fill, which is basically going to stretch the elements inside of it from the top all the way to the bottom. It's going to try to kind of fill up the entire space. That's fine. We're going to leave it like that. What I want to point out is distribution. So this is how the space is divided up horizontally. And if this were a vertical stack view, distribution would refer to how the space is divvied up vertically. All right, so looking at this horizontal stack view, we can either choose fill, which is the default, and it basically just gives each element the space that it needs. So that's why we kind of get this disproportionate spacing, is because this is the size that we had that stack view originally. And these two elements, this is the size that we had originally. So it's just going to keep that size. However, if we choose something like fill equally, that is going to divide up the space between all of the elements inside equally. So let's go ahead and choose that. And you can see now that it actually gives each stack view this an equal amount of space. It doesn't look like it because these image views are different sizes, but if you click the actual stack view like this, you're going to see that all of them actually have an equal amount of space horizontally. Okay, so now the next thing we should do is probably give these image views some widths, because we basically want this image view to be as wide as the stack view that contains it. So we need to do that. And in order to do that, we're basically going to highlight the image view and then hold down Command and highlight the stack view which contains it, so that both of them are highlighted. We're going to go down here to add new constraints, and whoops, didn't mean to click that one. This one's add new constraints, and we're going to say equal widths. When you do that, it adds a constraint you can see down here that says that the image view width should be the same width as the stack view. So let's do it for this other stack view and image view. Now highlight this image view, hold down Command, select the stack view that contains it, go down here, equal widths, add constraint. So you're going to see that stretch out. Do the same thing for this last one. Highlight the image view, hold down Command on your keyboard, and then click that stack view. Go down here, we're going to choose equal widths. Now there's actually a shortcut way to do this, and now this is completely optional. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to first delete this constraint which I just added. And the way you do this is if you highlight the image view, then you hold down Control on your keyboard, and then you click this image view and kind of drag it towards that stack view, and then let go. It's going to pop up this little menu, and you can simply select equal widths from there. So that has the same effect. Now that's sort of an advanced shortcut way to do it once you get more used to things. But remember, if your UI doesn't look like this, what I have right now, then chances are you've added incorrectly a constraint, and it's very easy to fix. Just go ahead, open up these little blue constraint menus, delete the constraints, and then re-add them. Or you can click on a constraint and then you can edit the properties of that constraint on the right hand side. But at this point you should have something that looks like this. So what we're going to do now is click on this root view here, and we are going to change that background to a black color, and then we are going to highlight the labels. So What you can do is you can expand each of these stack views so that you see all three labels. So click that, hold down Command to click the second one. While still holding down Command, click on the third one so you have all three of them highlighted. And then go over here in the Attributes Inspector, and you can change the text color to white for all three in one shot. And we're going to also change the font from regular to bold. And I'm going to change the text individually actually. So for this label, this is going to be our burrito. This one is going to be our burger. And this one is going to be our salmon. All right, and now we can actually also set the images. So let's go ahead and click this UI image view. Click image, and we're going to choose burrito. Now, what has happened here? It suddenly just blew our label out of the view, although it's actually still there if you take a look right here in the document outline. And this burrito kind of just is also distorted. And we're going to highlight this burrito image view, and then we're going to go to content mode. Instead of scale to fill, we'll say aspect fill. Now, that seems to have made things even worse. You can see the image spilling out of the image view now, and that's actually completely normal because the image is actually bigger than the image view. And if we don't want the image to spill out, what we can do is enable this clip to bounds property. So if we click that, it's going to clip the edges so that anything spilling out of the image view is kind of cropped or, clipped. All right, so now we still have to address the reason for this image kind of pushing that label out of the view. This brings us to a very important question. In this case that we have right here, this stack view only goes from here, like about here, down to here. There's only a finite amount of space. So what happens when there's not enough space to display both elements like we have in this case right here? Because the image wants to take up all of this space, and that really doesn't leave enough space for the label. So let me show you how we address that. Let's click on the label, this burrito label here. You can see it's actually a line. It's like squished. There's no height to it. And let's go over here to the size inspector. If you scroll all the way down, you're going to see a couple of things here. You're going to see content hugging priority and content compression resistance priority. I'm going to explain what content hugging priority is in a second, but I want to point out what this one is. When there's not enough space to display all of the elements, this is what the auto layout system uses to determine which element should be squished. The element with the lower content compression resistance priority will be the one that gets squished. So in this case, I think by default they're both 750. So let's take a look at this. Right now I have the label highlighted, and the vertical content compression resistance priority is 750. Now let's take a look at the image. If I click on the image and go down here, it's 750 as well. So that's why if you look at here in the document outline, if you look at this little red error icon and click it, it's telling us that there's some sort of content ambiguity. And it's telling us that we need to set the vertical compression resistance priority for these elements, because right now they're both tied at 750, and Xcode cannot determine which element to squish and which one not to. So let's go back to it, and we need to give one of these a higher priority than the other. So for the label, let's give it a higher priority. So let's break the tie and give this guy 751. Because this guy has a higher priority against compression, it's not going to get squished. Xcode will rather resize this element that has a lower resistance priority than to squish the label, because this label, right, has 751 content compression resistance priority, whereas this burrito UI image view has 750. Now, if I change this burrito image view to have a vertical compression resistance priority to 752, then you're going to see it actually takes out the label, because now the label has a lower priority, so it's going to get squished. Right? So we don't want that. Let's lower the vertical priority of the UI image view. So the same problem is going to happen with these two, but I want to talk about content hugging priority. So content hugging priority is actually the opposite problem. What happens when we have too much space? You can see here in this stack view, the label is actually stretched out like this. So content hugging priority dictates when there is too much space, which element is going to get stretched to fill up that extra space. Because in a stack view, when the distribution is set to fill, it's going to try and fill up that entire stack view. So you can see right now, because the UI image view doesn't really have a size, it's just trying to stretch out the label to fill up the remaining amount of space. Now, content hugging priority, like I said, determines when there is too much space, which element gets stretched out. The element with the higher content hugging priority will not get stretched. It's actually the element which has the lowest content hugging priority that is going to get squished. I know sometimes it's kind of hard to wrap your head around this because it feels like you're speaking in opposites. But the way I think about content hugging priority is I imagine hugging that element. So the tighter you hug it, as in the higher priority it has, the less likely it's going to get stretched out. So if I give this burger label a really high vertical content hugging priority, that means it's going to hug it really tight and it's not going to stretch it out. It's going to stretch out the other element, like you see what happened here. The other one is actually easier to understand. Compression resistance. It's exactly how it sounds, right? If you have a high compression resistance, then you're not going to get compressed. All right, so now let's set the image view for this guy. We're going to change back to this tab, Attributes Inspector. We're going to change the image to the burger, and we are going to change this to aspect fill, and we have the same sort of problem. So let's clip to bounds, and because this image is really large, there's not enough space to show both the label and the image. So we're going to have to set which element has a higher compression resistance. So obviously we want the label to be shown. Let's highlight the burger label and let's give it a high compression resistance on the vertical axis, higher than this image view at least. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. By now, you should understand what's happening. Let's choose salmon. Let's choose aspect fill. Let's clip to bounds. And then let's click on the salmon label. Let's go to size inspector. And then we're going to up the vertical compression resistance priority so that it's higher than this image view. All right, so now let's view as and take a look at this layout in a couple of different screen sizes. So let's go up. We got the iPhone 10 here. Let's click the zoom buttons. That looks good. Let's click on the iPhone 8 Plus. We'll zoom out, zoom back in. Looks good. Click on the iPhone SE and the iPhone 4S. And we can even change the orientation. I mean, it's going to try its best to follow our auto layout constraint rules and the stack view configurations. And we're going to get something like this. Everything's still visible. It's going to zoom out, zoom back in. You know, obviously it's not ideal to have a portrait orientation for this sort of layout. However, you know, in our project properties, we configured it so that it should be landscape only. So that's going to prevent it from going into portrait anyways. All right, so let's test it out in our simulator. Let's choose iPhone 8. Let's click run. And it's not going to change it to landscape by default. So we're going to press Command and right arrow, and you can see it like this. So today you learned about stack views and how they can be used to position elements. You also learned about content hugging priority and content compression resistance priority. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button below. And if you don't want to miss a single video, make sure you click that bell icon as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.